If one takes care of the means, the end will take care of itself. What does this mean and why is it so important? What's in the news with stories on crooked cops ×2, secession, some good news for a change, Dread Pirate Roberts, and Wikileaks. Also, an Ancap Apps segment on CryptoTip, an easy way for you to become a crypto evangelist. This episode is brought to you by ZenCash, a cryptocurrency that infuses privacy, anonymity, and security done right. Also brought to you by Free Talk Live, providing you with fresh, pro-liberty content 7 days a week on more than 180 radio stations across the country.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. From the state that is the only state in the Union with no sales tax and no income tax, this is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Rebellion needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at @TheLavaFlowPod. This is episode 98, Means versus Ends, and it's Tuesday, July 24th, 2018, when there have already been more than 620 people killed by police this year. And the United States debt clock shows us at $21,266,100,000,000 in debt. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. Last week, we talked about why I chose voluntarism as my preferred philosophy, and I received a ton of feedback on that. Thank you so much to those of you who reached out to me about it. It really means a lot to me when I hear from people who take what I say to heart and try to implement those things in their own lives. It's one of the main reasons I do this show. I mentioned last week a quote from Gandhi, who said, "If one takes care of the means, the end will take care of itself." This is a very important aspect of voluntarism, in my opinion, and this quote really helped me to understand that the way I work towards freedom is just as important, if not more important, than the ends that I seek. This is, of course, one reason that I consider myself a post-political libertarian. Last week, I said I would dive into this quote in a few weeks, but the more I thought about that quote, the more I realized it was important enough that I go ahead and start that conversation as soon as possible, especially after all the feedback I received from last week's show. Much of this segment is taken from other, much more eloquent sources than me. So, here we go. What is meant by this quote from Gandhi? If one takes care of the means, the end will take care of itself. So voluntarism is a dual doctrine, having both a positive and a negative side. As a brand of anarchism, it's the doctrine that all coercive government, what most people would refer to as the state, should be voluntarily abandoned, that all invasions of individual self-ownership rights should cease. This is the negative side. The positive side is that all the affairs of people should be conducted on a voluntary basis. It doesn't argue for the specific form that voluntary arrangements will take, only that the sovereignty of the individual must remain intact, except where the individual concerned has already aggressed upon the sovereignty of another non-aggressive individual. To voluntarists, this dual doctrine represents a means, an end, and an insight. The end, predicated upon a theory of self-ownership and just property titles, is a peaceful anarchy, an all-voluntary society. All the affairs of people, both public and private, should be carried out by individuals or their voluntary associations. The means to reach such an end state must be consistent with the goal sought. As we shall demonstrate, it is in fact the means that determine the end. So only voluntary methods of persuasion, education, and nonviolent resistance to state criminality must be used to bring about voluntarist goals. People cannot be coerced into freedom. Finally, voluntarism is a realization, an insight about the nature of political society, that all states are grounded upon general popular acceptance and require the cooperation of their victims. The voluntarist insight into the nature of political power does not permit people to violently overthrow their government or even use the electoral process to change it, but rather it points out that if they shall withdraw their cooperation from the system, it will no longer be able to function or enforce its will. Voluntarism relies heavily on the means-end insight to justify its own position. Indeed, without any formal guidelines as to the shape that an all-voluntary society will take, voluntarism necessarily concentrates exclusively on the means. Voluntarism is completely means-oriented, not goal-oriented, because all it objects to is the initiation of coercion against the non-invasive person. So long as the means are peaceful, respectful of self-ownership and property titles, the ends cannot be criticized from the voluntarist perspective. This is not to imply that the only standard of judging human behavior is whether or not it's voluntary. Certainly some behavior may be irrational, vicious, immoral, religious, irreligious, etc., but the first question the voluntary asks is it truly voluntary? The voluntarist spirit attacks the state on precisely this basis. Although certain government goods or services may be essential, it is not essential that they be provided by government. Whether we object to what governments do, for example, the provision of whatever product or public service, whether it be public schools, the post office, etc., is beside the point. Voluntarists oppose the state because it relies on force for its very existence. We oppose the state because of its means, regardless of its ends. The means-end insight encompasses many important points, the least of which is the commonplace observation that the means one uses must be consistent with the goal that one seeks. It's impossible in the nature of things to wage a war for peace or to fight politics by becoming political. Gandhi, who might be considered one of the true aristocrats of his time, understood that there is a great mystery concealed in the fact that the means are more important than the ends. As he wrote, "They say means are after all means. I would say means are after all everything. As the means, so the end. There is no wall of separation between means and ends. We have limited control over means and some over the ends. Realization of the goal is always in exact proportion to that of the means. Our progress towards the goal is always in exact proportion to the purity of the means. This method may appear to be long, perhaps too long, but I am convinced it is the shortest." Voluntarist arguments proceed against state coercion by criticizing the means, regardless of the ends. Healthcare or vaccination may be important, but if they are to be achieved by force, the means, they ipso facto become tainted. If those who advocate compulsory vaccination or state healthcare must rely on force to accomplish their goals, then there's something drastically wrong with the ends. Vaccination or healthcare is either good or bad. Its goodness removes the need for compulsion, and its badness destroys the right to coerce those who oppose it. Coercion never convinces, never brings about a change of mind. Similar arguments may be applied against the state itself. Either it's good or bad. Its goodness should avoid the need to apply invasive force, for it should be possible to persuade people of its goodness, and its badness already speaks for itself. If a government cannot rely wholly on voluntary support, then it deserves not to exist. Statists, in their anxiety to coerce others, already demonstrate their own lack of faith in the prescription they suggest. On the other hand, the voluntarist spirit is permeated with peaceful, non-violent means. Voluntarism is certainly not the cure-all or end-all of social evils, but to the extent that people can be persuaded to embrace the voluntary principle, it offers the best of all possible worlds. Voluntarism is not to be compared with the model of perfection. It is only offered as the most satisfactory among competing theories. Voluntarists do not operate on the principle that everyone necessarily knows his or her own best interest, but only that everyone should have the right to pursue his or her own interests as they deem best. What is being asserted is the right to act with one's own person and property, and not necessary wisdom of such actions. So long as you do your thing, with your own person and property, you in no way violate the spirit of voluntarism. Voluntarists have a clear understanding of the nature of power, what they call the voluntarist insight, that all government and human institutions depend on the consent and cooperation of its victims. A person who harbors the voluntarist spirit understands that he or she cannot be compelled to do anything against his or her will. Such a person may suffer the consequences of holding to his or her belief, but as Corbett Bishop, a World War II conscientious objector who fasted for over 400 days in government prisons and hospitals, pointed out, governments know that they can terrorize individuals into submitting to tyranny by grabbing the body as hostage and thus hoping to destroy the spirit of conscience and resistance within the individual. But if one repudiates the body and will have nothing to do with it, the spirit remains free. This is the essence of total non-cooperation with one's oppressors. The voluntarist spirit also reminds us of the Stoics who were different from others in refusing to allow pain to disturb the equanimity of their minds and the exercise of their reason. There's a story of a Stoic who was captured and told to renounce his beliefs. He refused, and he was tortured. Still unable to make him recant, his captors told him he would be put to death. He answered that they could do whatever they wanted with his body, but whatever they did could not injure his philosophy. Because his philosophy was in his mind, and their authority, in its physical and moral aspect, did not extend that far. As the relator of this story continues, Stoicism was unique in that its martyrs did not go to death believing their ideas would change the world. They went to death because their integrity was worth more to them than their existence. For life, if the courage to die by lacking is slavery. The man who is afraid to die cannot possibly live up to his version of the truth because he fears for both his person and his property. Thus, the only favorable course to those who uphold voluntarism is to remain loyal to one's own integrity. For man, as a moral agent as we are, has an obligation to value truth for its own sake, not for any supposed benefits it might bring as a byproduct. It's said that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And the voluntarist realizes that only by beginning the long-term efforts to delegitimize the state can any progress be made toward his or her own goal. As futile as a single step may seem, it's only by taking that very first step that the journey towards voluntarism can be started. Those who are moved by the voluntarist spirit, like me, realize that they must do everything humanly possible to move towards their goal. It was Ludwig von Mises, in his Notes and Recollections, who argued that it's a matter of temperament how we shape our lives and the knowledge of inescapable catastrophe. In high school, Mises had chosen a verse by Virgil as his motto. The original Latin translates to, "Do not yield to the bad, but always oppose it with courage." Look, I know voluntarism is not for everyone. I respect my minarchist and political anarchist brethren, but I feel I have found a better way for me and for my future, and our future. But more importantly, I feel I found a better way to remain as consistent as possible in my libertarian philosophy, which is very important to me. I know many people see political libertarians and non-political libertarians as going down the same track on a train, except the minarchist may get off the train a stop or two before the voluntarist. But as Wendy McElroy said, this is a mistaken notion. The destination of anarchism is different from and antagonistic to the destination of minarchism. The theory and the emotional commitment are different. Murray Rothbard captured the emotional difference by asking his famous question, "Do you hate the state?" Voluntarists respond with an immediate heartfelt yes. Minarchists give reserved, qualified agreement, all the while explaining the alleged distinction between a government and a state. Political anarchists are in the gray realm of agreeing heartily in words to principles which their actions contradict. It's time to have the differences between voluntarism and the political libertarianism clearly expressed, and for non-political alternatives to be pursued. This is the path that I've chosen personally. I hope you consider this path as well. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
It's time to shake up your podcast feed, folks, by subscribing to Lions of Liberty, the only libertarian variety show out there. Spend Mondays with me, Mark Claire, as I feature in-depth interviews with great names in the libertarian community and fun roundtable discussions.
Electric Liberty Land with me, Brian McWilliams, every Wednesday, your weekly dose of comedy, culture, and liberty.
And Felony Fridays with me, John Odermatt, where I expose injustice in the broken criminal justice system.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and at lionsofliberty.com.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In Crooked Cops news, former Biscayne Park Police Chief Raimundo Atisanio is accused of arresting black men for burglaries to boost the department's image. An investigation into a false arrest has uncovered a former Florida police chief's scheme to boost his department's clearance rate by arresting innocent people. The authorities are charging former Biscayne Park Police Chief Raimundo Atisanio and 2 officers, Charlie Daub and Raul Fernandez, with conspiracy to violate civil rights. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, the Chief's Department arrested a 16-year-old citizen for a series of burglaries without evidence, all to maintain a fictitious 100% clearance rate of reported burglaries. If convicted, the trio faces a maximum sentence of only 11 years in prison. At least one other arrest is now being investigated as well. In 2014, Erasmus Banma, 35, was charged with 5 vehicle burglaries in one day. Those charges were dropped after police did not cooperate with prosecutors. Former Biscayne Park village manager Heidi Shaffron ordered an internal probe of the department in 2014 in response to allegations about the department's racial bias. The probe's results, published in the Miami Herald last week, indicate that Atisanio directed his officers to pin crimes on random black men to boost the department's clearance rate. As Officer Anthony De La Torre described the method to an investigator, if they have burglaries that are open cases that are not solved yet, if you see anybody black walking through our streets and they have somewhat of a record, arrest them so we can pin them for all the burglaries. De La Torre said the tactic was used so the department would have a 100% clearance rate for the city. During the chief's roughly 2-year tenure as chief, 29 of 30 burglary cases were solved, including all 19 in 2013. In 2015, though, the year after he left, records show village cops did not clear a single one of the 19 burglary cases. Clearly, we all know things like this happen in many police departments around the country, if not the world. But to see it on such full display like this is unusual. It's always disgusting to see it, but at least some of the officers are working with investigators to get to the bottom of this. And I think that's why we so rarely see this in the light, because in most cases like this, let's be honest, officers circle the wagons and protect the thin blue line with everything they have. That is what makes this case unique. Good for the cops who are working with the investigators. If we're going to have government police officers, these are the kind we need. Of course, I would prefer no government police officers, though. In secession news, the California Supreme Court blocked a measure that would divide the state in 3 from appearing on the November ballot. The court's ruling states that because there are questions about the proposition's validity, the potential harm of putting it on the ballot now outweighs concerns about delaying the vote until a future election. Prop 9 qualified for the November ballot last month. Venture capitalist Tim Draper is leading the measure and has said it would be inappropriate for the court to block it from this ballot. He said the whole point of the initiative process was to be set up as a protection from a government that was no longer representing its people. Now that protection has been corrupted. Whether you agree or not with this initiative, this is not the way democracies are supposed to work. The measure would split the country's most populous state into 3 new states of near equal population: Northern California, Southern California, and California. Opponents sued, arguing the proposition abolishes the state's constitution, which cannot be done in a ballot initiative. Those in favor of the decision also said billions in taxpayer dollars would have been wasted to negatively impact public services, including protecting the environment. The initiative could still appear in the future if the court ultimately rules in its favor. But so much for the right of the people to alter or abolish it. I mean, come on. California citizens tried to do this the, quote, right way, following the laws on the books to make it happen, and they were shut down by the people who have the most to lose if it passes, the government. Imagine that shit. Talk about a gross display of the government protecting itself. One cryptocurrency project that I'm most excited about right now is ZenCash, with privacy, anonymity, and security done right. You can read all about ZenCash at thelavaflow.com/zen. Now look, I've read a ton of white papers on crypto, and this is the first one I've read that mentioned voluntary and voluntarist not once but 7 times. These are our people. And they are on the right track to mix great technology, excellent marketing, and awesome uses for their product. These guys get it, and they understand what crypto is all about. Now, this is a project, guys, that I believe in 100%. So much so that I have staked some of my own Zen to run a secure node on their network. So don't miss out on checking out this awesome project at thelavaflow.com/Zen. In some good news for news, it's been reported that Judge Andrew Napolitano's Freedom Watch show will return to Fox News. At the end of a new video interview with Nick Gillespie at Reason, Fox News senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano said that his Freedom Watch show, which aired on Fox Business from 2010 through 2012, will return to Fox Television probably before Thanksgiving. What to expect from the new show? Napolitano says in the interview that the new Freedom Watch will deal with the issues of human freedom and how the government, no matter who runs the Congress, who runs the White House, who runs the Supreme Court, continues to wear away at our freedoms. Hell yes. Napolitano further says the new show will be very, very similar to the Freedom Watch that you and many people listening and watching us now knew and loved and lamented the departure of. Wow. I mean, guys, this is just fantastic. In my opinion, there's never been a more libertarian pundit on the news with his own show than Judge Knapp. I used to watch Freedom Watch often when it was on the air before, and I'm super excited about this news. The man told it like it is on his show, which often got him in a bit of trouble. And if reports are true, it's what got his show canceled in the first place several years ago. While I did disagree with Judge Knapp many times, he was awesome at spreading the libertarian message in many ways. I'm going to keep an eye out on this one for you guys, and I'll let you know when this show is going to start airing again. In some quick Twitter news, Ross Ulbricht, the alleged Dread Pirate Roberts from the Silk Road, is now on Twitter. Apparently, someone is transcribing messages from him directly to Twitter, and his mother Lynn has confirmed to me that these are indeed real tweets directly from the real Ross Ulbricht. His first tweet read, "Hi, this is Ross. I'm hoping to find my voice here after all these years of silence. It's been a strange journey, but I'm so grateful for all those who've shown love and support and held me up through the hard times. You give me strength." This tweet also included a scanned image of a handwritten note from Ross. You can follow Ross on Twitter at RealRossU. And speaking of Ross, there is a Change.org petition for clemency for him that's up right now. There are over 30,000 signers as of this writing, and it's continuing to rapidly increase. If you have a spare couple of minutes, I highly encourage you to go and sign this petition. There will be a link in the show notes to this at thelavaflow.com/98. In more crooked cop news, 2 police officers in an Atlanta suburb are on administrative leave after their chief watched body camera video that appeared to show them joking about using a coin flip app to determine whether a driver should be arrested for reckless driving. Roswell police officers Courtney Brown and Christy Wilson were involved in a traffic stop on April 7th after Brown pulled over Sarah Webb, who was on her way to work. The officers are heard discussing a range of punishments in the video. Early in the discussion, Brown says she's considering arresting Webb for reckless driving. Later, they discuss the coin flip app. One officer says to the other, "A heads or tails." The sound of the app's coin flip is heard, and the one officer says, "This says tails, right?" The other officer responds, "Yeah, so release?" Followed by the first officer saying, 23. 23 is a Roswell police code for arrest. A video shows Brown arrest Webb. The officer says she was driving more than 80 miles per hour on a section of wet road that has a maximum speed of 45. The officer estimated her speed because she didn't have a radar gun. Chief Rusty Grant said in a statement that an internal investigation is underway. He said, "I have much higher expectations for our police officers, and I'm appalled that any law enforcement officer would trivialize the decision-making process of something as important as the arrest of a person." But it is trivial. I mean, look, this is just insanely disgusting and puts on display just how trivial and arbitrary our law enforcement truly is. When you can decide on a whim, at the flip of a coin, what consequences someone has for breaking some arbitrary bullshit law, then maybe that law shouldn't exist. I can imagine they would have done this for a true crime with an actual victim. Could you imagine an investigator deciding whether to arrest a rapist or not based on a coin flip? Of course not. But, of course, victimless crimes are not crimes, so they can be as arbitrary as they want about their enforcement. One of the largest reaching liberty programs today is Free Talk Live, with a 3-hour radio program 7 nights a week on more than 180 radio stations across the country. They are so influential on talk radio that they are the number 27 radio program in the country, according to Talkers Magazine. They also have a daily podcast that's been voted Best Political Podcast 5 times by podcastawards.com. The hosts of Free Talk Live are street preachers for the ideas of liberty. They take the message of peace, liberty, and cryptocurrency to the masses on the radio, where they are not preaching to the choir. You can listen via podcast or live via audio streaming or the Twitch or YouTube channels at freetalklive.com. I listen to their podcast myself every single morning when I get up to get a fresh perspective on news and very, very strong libertarian perspectives. Make sure to add them to your feed at freetalklive.com. In Wikileaks news, Ecuador will immediately withdraw asylum for Julian Assange and hand him over to the UK. A source close to the Ecuadorian Foreign Ministry and the President's office, unauthorized to speak publicly, has confirmed to The Intercept that Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno is close to finalizing, if he has not already finalized, an agreement to hand over Assange to the UK within the next several weeks. The withdrawal of asylum and physical ejection of Assange could come as early as this week. Last week, RT reported that Ecuador was preparing to enter into such an agreement. The consequences of such an agreement depend in part on the concessions Ecuador extracts in exchange for withdrawing Assange's asylum. But as former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa told The Intercept in an interview in May, Moreno's government has returned Ecuador to a highly subservient and submissive posture towards Western governments. It's thus highly unlikely that Moreno, who has shown himself willing to submit to threats and coercion from the UK, Spain, and the US, will obtain a guarantee that the UK does not extradite Assange to the US, where top Trump officials have vowed to prosecute Assange and destroy Wikileaks. The Obama administration was also eager to prosecute Assange and Wikileaks for publishing hundreds of thousands of classified documents, but ultimately concluded that there was no way to do so without either also prosecuting newspapers such as the New York Times and The Guardian, which also published the same documents, or creating precedents that would enable the criminal prosecution of media outlets in the future. Indeed, it is technically a crime under U.S. law for anyone, including the media outlets, to publish certain types of classified information. But the U.S. Justice Department has never wanted to indict and prosecute anyone for the crime of publishing such material, contenting themselves instead to prosecuting the government sources who leaked it. Their reluctance has been due to 2 reasons. First, media outlets would argue that any attempts to criminalize the mere publication of classified or stolen documents is barred by the press freedom guaranteed in the First Amendment, a proposition that the DOJ has clearly never wanted to test. Second, no DOJ has wanted, as part of its legacy, the creation of a precedent that allows the U.S. governments to criminally prosecute journalists and media outlets for reporting classified documents. But the Trump administration has made it super clear that they have no such concerns. Quite the contrary. Last April, Trump's then CIA director, Mike Pompeo, now his Secretary of State, delivered a deranged, rambling, highly threatening broadside against Wikileaks. Without citing any evidence whatsoever, Pompeo decreed that Wikileaks is a non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia, and then declared, "We have to recognize that we can no longer allow Assange and his colleagues the latitude to use free speech values against us." I shit you not. Fuck that guy in the neck. Pompeo then issued this bold threat. To give them the space to crush us with misappropriated secrets is a perversion of what our great Constitution stands for. It ends now. Wow. Glenn Greenwald wrote a fantastic article on this topic where a lot of this story comes from, but you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you missed the full article that he wrote. This guy's a fantastic author. If you recall, Greenwald was one of the very few journalists that Edward Snowden trusted to go live with the information that he had on the NSA spying. You can get a link to the full article from Greenwald in the show notes to this episode. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode. Or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Ancap Apps.
This Ancap app product is a really cool one that helps you spread the gospel of cryptocurrency to the muggles. The new product is called CryptoTip, and it's a printable cryptocurrency tip that you can give to anyone you want, whether you're a server at a restaurant, a taxi driver, a hairstylist, a cashier, family, friends, or even coworkers. A CryptoTip is an excellent way to quickly introduce people who have provided you with good service to the world of cryptocurrency. All you have to do is easily create and then print and cut out the business card-sized tips. It's free to use CryptoTip. All you do is you put them in your wallet, and when you want to tip with CryptoTip, you leave one of these, business card-sized CryptoTips along with a generous cash tip. Now, be generous with the cash tip, of course, because service providers are much more likely to seriously examine your CryptoTip if you've also given them a cash tip, a really good one. You want to pique their interest with a bonus in crypto, not stiff them on their cash tip and make them throw out your CryptoTip. Even if the CryptoTip does end up in the trash, though, it's not a problem. You get to set an expiration date, so the crypto will return to the wallet you specify if the crypto isn't claimed by that date. And this is a huge bonus. There was a similar product a few years ago using Bitcoin, but the major problem with that is many of those cards were never cashed in, so to speak. Unfortunately, with that product, the crypto would never return if it wasn't used. So there's quite a bit of crypto out in the ether that can never be used again because of it. Another really cool use for these is to give them to your friends or family, like as a stocking stuffer or included with a greeting card for a birthday. Leave them in interesting places, in books, at the library, or places where people are waiting around, like the laundromat. Anywhere that muggles tend to gather would be a great place to leave these lying around with a couple of bucks of Dash digital cash on it for people to find and pique their interest. This product was the brainchild of the Shire Free Church right here in the cryptocurrency mecca of the world, New Hampshire, and it's just so damn easy to use. Basically, you go to the CryptoTip website at cryptotip.org and click Create Tips at the top. You then fill in your Dash refund address and your email address. The refund address is your specific Dash address where you want the crypto to go back to if it's not used. And the email address is used for you to receive updates on when a card's been used by the person you gave it to or when it's been refunded back to you. You then have several options to choose from for the creation of the individual cards. You can choose any amount of Dash for each card. I recommend doing these in $5 increments per card personally. You can then choose how many cards to print, how long they should be valid for before they expire, and if you want to leave a small tip for the creators of CryptoTip, which I highly recommend. I mean, these guys did great work. For the expiration, I would recommend giving the person a few months to decide if they want to try it out before having the card expire. The cards that print will also show the expiration date on them when it's printed, so the person you give it to is fully aware of that. Help us all and easily become a crypto evangelist by getting some CryptoTip today for free or for a small tip to the creators if you so choose. Spreading the good news of crypto is one of the best things we can do for the future of liberty, and it is so easy with CryptoTip. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite proofer, Jessica, for her help with the show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on the show, go to thelavaflow.com/98. I have yet another new supporter this week. Chad J. became a $2 per episode supporter through Patreon. Chad, dude, that rocks so hard. Thanks, man. So thanks to Chad and all of my awesome supporters, I am at $287 per episode, or 57.4% of the way towards my next goal of $500 per episode. Thank you for all the support, guys, really. Remember, when I hit this next goal, I will be upping the content I bring you from half an hour per week to a full hour. I know you want more content from me, and I want to give it to you. So add your pledge today to help me bring you twice the lava flow that you're getting today. So exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. I want to be able to bring you more content soon, so make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. I also have 2 new Apple Podcast reviews this week. Anarcho Chad said, pro-liberty genius, one of the most straightforward, liberty-minded podcasts out there. Roger truly speaks for freedom. Bravo, Roger. Thanks, Chad, and bravo to you. That is awesome to hear. I love it. And Nick B. 1989 said, great source for news. Roger presents today's current issues as they should be presented. It's a great show for anyone who wants to grow as a libertarian. Wow. Nick, thank you so much for that. So if you have a minute and you want to hear your review on this show, please go to thelavaflow.com/Apple and leave me a rating and a review. All the cool kids are doing it. Thank you to everyone who has left me a rating and a review so far. You guys rock. To all of you who haven't, can you guys help me out and go leave a review for me? Go to thelavaflow.com/Apple to do that now. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.